This is the Fengineer with more insights to Forrest Fenn's The Thrill of the Chase. Today, let's talk about the asterisk. The unusual way the asterisk is used in Forrest Fenn's The Thrill of the Chase makes it seem like an obvious clue to help solve the poem and find where warm waters halt and the chest. On page 15, which is a large font page early in the book, it ends in a large asterisk. There's reference to Forrest Fenn's last flight. And in My War for Me, there's also a reference to his last flight. Of course, he gets shot down, and that's bad luck to be shot down on your first or last mission. So Forrest gets 4-star general's approval for a last flight to avoid that. And when I noted that the 4 stars seem like 4 asterisks, which must be very important. So if you say, hey, that's really important, what's around there? How do we interpret that? And slightly right adjacent to that is Forrest's reference to the Vietnam Memorial. And we all know that the memorial has these names in chronological order, and Forrest notes that soon they will just be names. It will be but an asterisk in the history of a forgotten war, and nobody will really remember who they are. And so tying those two together, I thought, hey, let's look at the first and last names on the wall and see if we can get any hints from that. The first name is Dale Buse, who died in 1957. He was an advisor sent by Dwight D. Eisenhower, and Eisenhower is referenced on the very first page of The Thrill of the Chase, which seemingly means to me that it must be an important clue. So I think we're on the right track. And the last name on the wall is Richard Van de Geer, died in 1975, and he was a Jolly Green Giant helicopter pilot, which I've always been struggling to combine these threads. There's several references to helicopters in The Thrill of the Chase, and I haven't really been able to incorporate those into my solve until now. So when I saw this, I was excited. Of the first flight or the last flight, Forrest seems to put more weight on the last flight. So let's look at Richard Van de Geer first. Again, he was this Jolly Green Giant helicopter pilot, the same type of helicopter that rescued Forrest after he was shot down. And the word Van de Geer made me think of Van de Veer, and that's the middle name of Ferdinand Van de Veer Hayden, who was a geologist in the third expedition to the future Yellowstone National Park area in 1871. The 2 prior expeditions had been in 1869 and 1870. Well, if we look these up on Wikipedia, you can find this old map that they drew at the time. And if you read about the 3 expeditions, they all covered a route generally similar to what I've shown in here in the brown dashed line. And that is, explored the Yellowstone River, the Lamar Valley, Yellowstone Lake, Firehole River area, and Old Faithful, and the Geyser area. And 2 of the expeditions then left via the West Yellowstone area. And so, in reading about these 3 expeditions, what was the common element, or how do you find a clue and all that? Well, again, these maps are available on Wikipedia, so it's not, I don't think that's specialized knowledge, but the thing that jumped out at me that they had in common was none of the 3 expeditions explored the area between Mammoth Hot Springs and the Firehole confluence with the Madison River. And that's that area, like say the Obsidian Cliff area, the Sheep Eater Cliffs, and Munson Peak, and the chest site that I'm proposing in Glen Creek. None of them investigated that area, and that seemed to me to be the common thing. And so I know Forrest in other areas. I believe that he often makes references to certain things, but then the hint is often by omission. What's missing, like in the AM PM. Often he wrote 6 AM and put the AM in there, but when it was 6 PM, he didn't put the PM in there. So it a lot of times things were by omission, and I think this hint that none of the 3 expeditions went here provides a strong clue that this may be the solve site. Looking closer at the first and last names, I realized I skipped over something, because the first name, And the full name is Dale Richard Buse, and his last name is Richard Vandegeer. So what do they have in common? Well, obviously Richard. And Richard in Old French means king, ruler, leader, brave, which there's many parallels to those themes in the Thrill of the Chase, in the Totem Cafe caper. Frosty is described as French and a ruler. And there's references to Scarface in that chapter because he drove the yellow Cadillac, and I believe that's a reference to Scarface. And the mob bosses are known as dons, and the references to Oxford that I presented previously, the teachers with robes are known as dons, and there's these references to teachers in Skippy becoming alphas, which are alpha would be king or ruler. So all that ties into supporting this notion of Richard being a solid clue. And as I've also presented in prior videos from my Glen Creek Solve, I believe that these refer to King Richard I of England, who was known as Richard the Lionheart. And Richard Lionheart, again, he had a couple of crusades to the Middle East where he fought Solomon or Saladin. Who one of his disciples was was Omar Khayyam, who wrote that very interesting poem in the early end of the 11th century that's in the Thrill of the Chase. And King Richard I of England ruled his castle, his throne, his base of power was in Oxford, which, as I previously described, is the city of the dreaming spires. And that is a reference to the hoodoos, because the hoodoos in geologic terms are known as damsels coiffes, or ladies with hairdos. And if you look at the chapter "No Place for Biddies," you see that the ladies have these flat top hairdos, which are exactly how hoodoo rock formations are flat top spires of rock. So you can see in the gray area, that's the hoodoos, the rock formations with the flat tops that are south of Mammoth Hot Springs. And this is a slide from a prior video I presented, shows many of the main clues, Homer Brown and others, including the Terry Scant with Marvel Gaze looking up at the Roosevelt Arch to the north. So I'm adding in this slide the references to the number 4, 5, 6. And where do these come from? Well, in the Lewis and Clark chapter, Forrest says, so on the 4th, 5th, or 6th day, I forget which, we were pretty sure we'd used up most of the fund. That's a odd way to phrase that. So it didn't make me take note that that was a clue. And then in driving home with Skippy, in the text, he notes that it's a certain number of miles and they drove at a certain speed. And if you divide those out, you get 45.6 hours. In Bessie and Me, I noted that Bessie had 4 teats and Forrest gave 5 squirts each to 6 cats. And in the graduation chapter, there was a photo of Skippy graduating and where he's looking unhappy, and Forrest's dad is looking proud. There's 4 things that Skippy's unhappy about, and the postmark for that chapter is 5 June or 5/6, and that's the same postmark date as in the Golden Moor chapter. It's the only postmark that appears twice with it. And so what do you do with this? 4, 5, 6. Well, my theory is if you add a 4 at the front end, that's 44 degrees, 56 minutes latitude, which crosses directly over Rustic Falls on Glen Creek and directly over Bunsen Peak, and is just slightly south of my proposed chest location along Glen Creek under Cathedral Rock. I'm not sure about this one. I'm going to file it under the category like Fox Mulder and the X-Files. I want to believe. I've long looked at this plain tail number and thought that that must be a clue. And now I'm realizing that if you read it backwards, it could be 429 and 110. And does that mean longitude 110 degrees, 42.9 minutes? That would be directly through the area where I believe the treasure is located, just east or just west of Cathedral Rock. And Forrest notes when he shot down that after he ejected, he saw his plane hit halfway up a 1,000-foot high stone bluff. And Cathedral Rock, the top of Cathedral Rock, is actually 1,000 feet above Glen Creek, and the base of Cathedral Rock is 500 feet above Glen Creek. So, that could be a hint that the treasure chest location might be at the base of Cathedral Rock. Let's look at that a little closer. So this is a photo I got on the internet from someone hiking up to Bunsen Peak, looking. That's Cathedral Rock in the center, and looking off to the north. And I mean, man, what a picturesque spot! And really seems like a great spot that would inspire Forrest's quote on the first page of the book. My church is the mountains, isn't it? My church is in the mountains, and along the river bottoms where dreams and fantasies alike go to play. And I'm suggesting that the treasure site location is somewhere, around the base of Cathedral Rock, between there and Glen Creek. It's steep, but it doesn't appear to be super steep. It's not a scree slope. Um, you know, you have to verify that you could go there safely. I have not been there. Um, but it certainly looks like a spectacular spot, and I'd love to check it out. If you go, do it safely. This is a Google Earth photo of the Glen Creek section that's below Cathedral Rock, and this is the best photo I could get. It's not very good, but it does show that there's a nice flow of water, rapids. I think a lot of little small waterfalls, many big rocks that have fallen down off these cliffs or off these slopes from the Hoodoos and Bunsen Peak over the years. Very interesting canyon reach. The slopes are steep, but not that tall. And there's areas where I think you could scramble down there safely or hike in from the downstream section. It would take a little longer, but it's still not really all that far. Both on a pro and a con, you've got this aqueduct maintenance access road for the aqueduct that brings water into Mammoth Hot Springs, and that's fairly near Glen Creek, which be an easy way to get down there, but also Forrest said it wasn't really near a trail. But if he had to hike across Glen Creek and say up to the base of Cathedral Rock, which I think would be spectacular view, not quite as good as that last slide, but still a wonderful area. And I'd love to go exploring it. And this is all north-facing area, which would rarely get sun, and that could possibly be an area that Forrest hints at of being in the cold, because snow would stick around here, and it would be cold without much sunshine here. This has been the Fengineer. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. More great content coming up. Thank you.